What is up, guys? In this video we are going to be torquing down the head of an EJ25 block on my Subaru. This is a 2006 Subaru Forester, and we are going to also be installing the head gasket on this as well. The first thing I'm doing is spraying down a new clean cloth with some brake cleaner in order to make sure that we've got a dirt-free and grease-free surface, so we've got a really nice mating surface for our head gasket, our engine block, as well as the new head. And prior to this, I've also used emery cloth as well as a razor blade to get as much of the debris off the surface. And then what really helped me get it smooth is using a Dremel with a wire brush attached to it. And I just kind of used that to polish the surfaces and make sure that they were as smooth and clean as they could be. And now we're going to be installing the new head gasket. This is a Fel-Pro head gasket I'm going with because I believe the Fel-Pro head gaskets are hopefully high quality, and hopefully they'll last longer than the stock Subaru Forester ones do, because this is a very common point of failure on these EJ25 motors. Now I'm installing the head of the engine on. I did tilt the engine vertical so that it is easier to get the block to sit down, or the posts to sit into the head. And the next thing we're going to be doing is installing the head bolts in the same exact locations that they came out. So I'm just giving each bolt a good wipe down and then applying some engine assembly lubricant onto the threads as well as the washer. And basically it's going to be a very repetitive process here of putting on the assembly lube, and then I'm hand threading the bolts down just to make sure that they sit nicely into the engine block, because the last thing you want to do here is strip any of these. And then I do notice some little things here and there, but basically we're just going to keep doing the same thing on the remaining 5 head bolts. And I was using a 14 mil socket with an extension to kind of give myself a little screwdriver to get them down as far as I could. And yeah, so this next part of the video is just going to be repeating the same process. Make sure to get these head bolts in the exact same location that they came out of, and then we're going to be following the Subaru specific torque sequence for this engine, which is rather unique and interesting. After hand threading all the bolts down, the next thing I'm doing is getting out a ratchet that will help me just hand tighten these again to make sure that we've fully hand torqued these bolts. And again, not even snug, just making sure they're down all the way, sitting nicely into the threads. And we're going to repeat this on all the bolts. And then Subaru does have a very specific pattern that you will follow. It's basically kind of making a star, which we'll show in just a sec once we get to that point. And so the pattern that we're going to follow here is first set a torque wrench to 22 foot-pounds, and then you're going to torque the top middle bolt to 22 foot-pounds, then the bottom middle bolt, then the top left bolt, then the bottom right bolt, then the bottom left bolt, and then finally the top right bolt. And so this is kind of making like a star pattern, and we're doing this to make sure that that engine, the head is sitting down flush. And now we're going to set our torque wrench to 51 foot-pounds. And then we're going to do the same process in the same pattern, getting the top middle bolt to 51 foot-pounds. And then we're going to do the bottom middle bolt. And the engine stand was rotating a bit as I was torquing on it, because these are getting a little bit higher. And then we're going to do the top left. Bottom right, bottom left, and then the top right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to back all of the bolts off 180 degrees in the reverse order. So we're going to go with the top right, then the bottom left, then the bottom right, and I didn't have much room, and then the top left, and then the bottom middle, and then the top middle. And then basically we're going to do an additional 180 on all the bolts in that same order. Top right, bottom left, bottom right, top left, bottom middle, and then top middle. Next thing we're going to do, and I did this slightly out of order, but I'm going to put on some paint onto the top of each of the head bolts. And we're doing this because we are going to need to track the rotations that we place on the bolts coming up soon. So it's just marking all these. Now we are going to set our torque wrench to 31 foot-pounds and then torque all of the head bolts in our original order, doing the top middle, top left, bottom right, bottom left, top right. Next, we're going to now rotate all bolts 90 degrees in the original order, doing the top middle, top left, bottom right, bottom left, top right. Now rotate all bolts 45 degrees in the same original order. Finally, we're going to now rotate the two middle bolts an additional 45 degrees following the original pattern, the top middle, then the bottom middle. And after you've done this, you have successfully now finished torquing down the head bolts on the Subaru EJ25 motor.